The galactic hegemony's massive ships darkened Earth's skies like artificial moons. For 3 days, they had remained silent, hanging motionless above every major city. No communication, no demands, just their overwhelming presence casting shadows across a suddenly united humanity. Admiral Tejo finally appeared on every screen worldwide at precisely noon GMT. His humanoid form seemed almost familiar, though the iridescent blue skin and 4 pupilless eyes marked him as something entirely alien. The universal translator conveyed his message with perfect clarity. People of Earth, I am Admiral Tejo of the 7th Fleet, representative of the galactic hegemony. Your world is now under our protection and authority. You have 30 standard days to prepare for integration into our empire. Resistance is. He paused, his expression showing what might have been amusement. Historically unsuccessful. In the Antarctic Research Station buried 2 kilometers beneath the ice, Dr. Summon Park watched the broadcast with 50 of Earth's most brilliant minds. Unlike the billions of terrified humans above, her team showed no fear, only grim determination. He's exactly like the others, she murmured, studying Tejo's mannerisms. Same arrogance, same neural patterns. The facility had been built 15 years earlier, after Earth's long-range quantum detectors had first discovered the hegemony's expansion. While governments publicly denied the existence of alien life, they privately funneled trillions into Soman's project. General Kim entered the command center, his normally stoic face showing rare concern. They're giving us 30 days. The Security Council is meeting now. Half want to surrender immediately. The other half are discussing conventional resistance. Both options mean extinction, Soman said. She pulled up holographic displays showing 17 different planetary systems. Every species that surrendered was slowly processed, their resources stripped, their populations reduced to slave labor, their cultures erased. Those who fought conventionally didn't last a week. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the simulations they'd run thousands of times. Earth's most advanced weapons were children's toys compared to hegemony technology. Is the contingency ready? Kim asked, voicing the question everyone was thinking. Salmon walked to the center of the room where a simple metal pedestal stood. Its surface held nothing but a small red button protected by a clear cover. It's been ready for years. We just never thought we'd actually need to use it. Above ground, panic spread despite government assurances. Grocery stores emptied within hours. Religious gatherings swelled across all faiths. Military installations worldwide went to highest alert, though most officers understood the futility of their weapons against the visitors. Inside the hegemony flagship, Admiral Tejo reviewed Earth's data with his science officer. Primitive but resourceful, the officer noted. Their silicon-based computing technology is surprisingly advanced for a pre-space civilization. Any signs of quantum manipulation? Tejo asked. Nothing significant. Some basic experiments in laboratories, nothing weaponized. Tejo nodded. Standard procedure then. Begin atmospheric composition adjustment in 10 days. Their biology will adapt or fail. What the hegemony couldn't detect was the true nature of Earth's defense. The contingency wasn't a weapon in any conventional sense. It operated on principles the aliens considered theoretical at best. Summon gathered her core team for the final briefing. The room held 20 scientists representing every continent. For 15 years, they had lived in this facility, separated from families and the outside world. The contingency is based on a simple discovery, Salman explained to General Kim, who represented Earth's unified military command. All hegemony species share a unique quantum signature in their neural structures. It's fundamentally different from human brains. She displayed complex models showing neural pathway comparisons. We discovered this by analyzing the signals we intercepted. Their consciousness operates on a quantum level that ours doesn't. This makes them more advanced in many ways, but also vulnerable. Ji-hoon, her brilliant protege, continued the explanation. We've created a quantum field generator that can identify and target that specific neural pattern. When activated, it creates a phase shift that will affect every being with that neural signature. And the effect? Kim asked. Displacement, Soman said quietly. Not death. At least not technically. Their consciousness will be shifted to a parallel quantum state. From our perspective, they'll simply disappear. The entire hegemony. Throughout the galaxy. Yes, the field propagates instantaneously through quantum entanglement. Distance doesn't matter. Kim looked troubled. The ethical implications are enormous, Soman finished. We're talking about trillions of sentient beings, but they've exterminated 17 species that we know of. They're starting atmospheric alterations in 10 days that will make Earth uninhabitable for humans while optimal for their biology. Outside, the first demonstrations of hegemony power began. A small island in the Pacific, evacuated days earlier, vanished in a flash of light, leaving nothing but churning ocean where land had stood for millions of years. A sample of consequences for resistance, Taiho announced globally. Communications between the Antarctic facility and world governments intensified. While publicly appearing to prepare for surrender, secretly Earth's leaders received briefings on the contingency. The Chinese premier asked the question everyone feared. If we press this button, are we any better than them? The Secretary General responded, if a wolf attacks your family, do you hesitate to kill it because you'll be taking a life? Some moral questions only have meaning when survival isn't at stake. 10 days in, hegemony ships began deploying atmospheric processors. The air in major cities took on a slightly greenish tint. Hospital admissions for respiratory distress doubled overnight. In Antarctica, Soman rarely slept. The weight of responsibility kept her working around the clock, triple-checking calculations and running final simulations. Jihoon found her staring at the button early one morning. Do you think they've faced this before? He asked. A species that could fight back in a way they didn't expect. Soman's fingers hovered near the protective case. I don't know. But tomorrow, we find out. The contingency was humanity's only hope, a desperate gamble based on a quantum quirk that might save Earth, or might fail completely. As hegemony ships continued their atmospheric work and Admiral Taiho prepared for the formal surrender ceremony, humanity's finger rested on a button that might change the galaxy forever. 20 kilometers beneath Mount Pektu, Jihoon watched the wall of quantum processors pulse with soft blue light. Unlike traditional computers with their rigid architectures, these machines resembled organic structures, crystalline networks that mimicked the neural patterns they were designed to disrupt. It's beautiful, in a terrible way, he said to no one in particular. The facility was one of 7 identical installations built around the world, each housing a segment of the contingency. The Korean site specialized in the targeting algorithms, the part of the system that would distinguish between human and alien neural patterns. Jihoon had been only 16 when Dr. Soman Park had discovered him at a science competition in Seoul. Now, 10 years later, he sometimes struggled to remember life before the project. His world had become this underground complex with its artificial lighting and recycled air. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Soman's face appeared on the main screen, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. The Chinese hub is online. All 7 nodes are now active and synchronized. Any word from the surface? Jihoon asked. Soman's expression darkened. The hegemony has started atmospheric seeding over major cities. Reports of breathing problems are increasing. Their terms now include biological optimization of select human populations. Neither needed to explain what that meant. Their intercepted communications had made it clear. Humans would be modified to serve the Empire's needs. Most would not survive the process. Across the globe, 7 hidden facilities hummed with power as the contingency prepared for activation. In Antarctica, the Central Command Center coordinated the global network. Under the Amazon rainforest, the power generation systems converted Earth's magnetic field into energy. Beneath the Mariana Trench, cooling systems prevented the quantum processors from overheating. In the Sahara, signal amplifiers prepared to extend the field beyond the solar system. Under Mount Pektu, targeting systems fine-tuned their neural recognition patterns. In the Australian outback, quantum field stabilizers ensured precise manipulation. Deep in Siberian permafrost, fail-safe mechanisms stood ready to shut everything down if something went wrong. The project represented humanity's total scientific knowledge, built in secret while the world above continued normal life. Ji-hoon entered the quantum chamber where the core processors were housed. The room maintained a temperature near absolute zero, necessary for proper quantum functioning. His breath frosted instantly as he checked final calibrations through his protective visor. "You're worried," came a voice behind him. Dr. Minjae, the facility's philosopher-ethicist, had followed him into the chamber. "Aren't you?" Ji-hoon replied, not looking up from his work. "Of course. But my concerns aren't technical. The system will function. You've ensured that. My worry is what we become afterward." Ji-hoon finally turned. "What does that matter if there is no afterward? The hegemony doesn't leave survivors." Minjae approached the gleaming quantum core. "The contingency isn't like dropping a bomb or firing a gun. It's elegant, as Soman says. It targets consciousness itself. No known species has wielded such power." Outside the facility, in the world above, Admiral Teiho's ships continued their demonstrations of power. The southern half of an uninhabited Japanese island vanished in an instant, cut as cleanly as if by a surgeon's knife. Global news networks broadcast the footage while governments urged calm and compliance. In his private quarters, Ji-hoon reviewed the latest neural scan data from the hegemony representatives who had begun meeting with Earth's leaders. Each scan confirmed what they already knew. The aliens' neural pathways operated on quantum principles, fundamentally different from human consciousness. His screen chimed with an incoming message. It was Soman, requesting a private channel. "I need you to look at something," she said without preamble when the secure line opened. She shared a file, data from the most recent neural scans. Ji-hoon studied the patterns. "There's a variation here. Minor, but definite. Yes, Admiral Taiho's patterns show a quantum signature slightly different from the other hegemony species, more complex. What does it mean?" Someone's face showed rare uncertainty. "I don't know, but it suggests the hegemony itself might contain internal variations. Some individuals might be different enough to survive the contingency." "No," she said firmly. "The targeting is broad enough to capture all variations we've detected, but it raises questions about their evolution, their history. Questions we won't get answers to if we activate the system." Ji-hoon noted. "Questions we won't be alive to ask if we don't." The conversation weighed on Ji-hoon as he walked through the facility toward the central quantum lab. The contingency had always been theoretical, a last resort they hoped never to use. Now, with hegemony ships actively modifying Earth's atmosphere, theory was becoming reality. In the lab, 30 scientists worked in focused silence, each handling a crucial aspect of the quantum targeting system. They represented the best minds from Korea, China, Japan, and Russia, the East Asian node of the global project. "Dr. Soman wants final calibration reports within 6 hours, Ji-hoon announced. "The Security Council is meeting to vote on activation within 24 hours. The room's activity intensified. No one needed to be told what was at stake. Later, alone in the facility's small meditation room, Ji-hoon confronted his doubts. The contingency would not kill the hegemony aliens, not exactly. It would shift their quantum consciousness to a parallel state, effectively removing them from this reality. They would exist, but not here. Not where they could harm humanity. Was this murder? Was it genocide? Or was it simply the only form of self-defense available against an overwhelming force?" His tablet chimed with an alert. On the surface, just kilometers from their hidden entrance, a hegemony scout ship had landed. It was deploying atmospheric sensors. "They're getting closer," Minja said, entering the room. "Do you think they suspect?" "No," Ji-hoon replied. They're too confident. They've never encountered resistance they couldn't overcome through conventional means. A deeper alert sounded. Admiral Taeho was making another announcement. They watched together as the blue-skinned alien addressed Earth. Your atmosphere modification proceeds on schedule. We are pleased with initial compliance, but note pockets of resistance forming. As a demonstration of consequences, we will remove one small city in each resistant region. You have 6 hours to provide the names of resistance leaders, or selections will be made randomly. When the transmission ended, Ji-hoon's tablet lit up with a message from Summon. Acceleration authorized. Final preparations now. In the command center, Ji-hoon initiated the quantum targeting sequence. Screens around him displayed the status of all 7 global nodes, green lights across the board. If we do this, he said quietly to Min-jae, who had followed him, we're not just defending ourselves. We're becoming something else, something new in the galaxy. Min-jae placed a hand on his shoulder. They've conquered 17 species to extinction. They harvest planets and leave nothing behind. Sometimes survival means making impossible choices. Beneath 7 mountains, 7 deserts, 7 hidden places around the world, humanity's last hope hummed with increasing power. The contingency was no longer theoretical. Within hours, it would answer the most terrible question. Could humanity survive by making all aliens disappear? Admiral Taeho stood at the viewing window of his command ship, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. The blue-green planet reminded him of his own homeworld from millennia ago, before the hegemony had transformed it into an ecumenopolis of metal and stone. Something about this world tugged at memories he thought long forgotten. You seem troubled, Admiral, said Commander Doyen, his second in command. These humans puzzle me, Taeho admitted. We've conquered 17 species, and each followed predictable patterns. The Norvelians begged and trembled. The Seth fought to the last. But these humans, they ask questions, Doyen finished. Precisely. Their leaders sit across from us for hours, requesting clarifications about taxation systems, cultural preservation statutes, hierarchical structures within converted populations. Taeho's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. It's almost as if they're gathering intelligence rather than negotiating surrender. Perhaps they simply wish to appear dignified in defeat, Doyen suggested. Perhaps. But Taeho wasn't convinced. In the diplomatic chamber of the hegemony vessel, Earth's Secretary-General sat with a small team of advisors. They had been discussing the same minor point of administrative law for nearly 3 hours. So to clarify, the Secretary-General said, planet-wide administrators would be selected from converted humans, not imported from other hegemony worlds. The hegemony diplomat's patience was clearly wearing thin. As I've explained, initial administration comes from experienced officials. After suitable conversion and training, selected humans may serve in secondary roles. Small devices hidden in the human's clothing silently recorded every word, every biological signature, every quantum fluctuation in the alien's neural patterns. Back on Earth, in a secure facility beneath Seoul, Shuno monitored the incoming data. As the hegemony diplomat grew frustrated, the quantum patterns in his neural signature became more pronounced. We're getting excellent readings, he reported to Soman through their secure channel. The emotional variation is giving us clear distinctions between baseline and agitated states. Perfect, Soman replied from Antarctica. We need as much data as possible to ensure the contingency affects all neural states. Across Earth, similar operations were underway. In Geneva, Beijing, Washington, and New Delhi, diplomatic teams engaged hegemony representatives in endless circular discussions. Each team had been carefully selected and trained to prolong conversations while appearing earnest and concerned. Admiral Taeho reviewed the reports with growing irritation. 7 days of negotiations, and they've agreed to nothing concrete. At this rate, atmospheric conversion will be complete before formal surrender. The humans have requested another meeting, Doyen reported. Their cultural experts wish to discuss preservation of what they call historical landmarks. Tahoe's patience snapped. Enough. No more meetings. No more discussions. He activated the global communication system. I will address them directly. In homes and public spaces across Earth, screens activated automatically as the hegemony override took control of all broadcasting systems. People of Earth, Tahoe began, his translated voice cold and precise. Your leaders waste our time with pointless questions while resistance movements grow. This ends now. You have 5 Earth days to submit completely. Further delay will be considered hostile action. In the Antarctic facility, Salman watched the broadcast with her team. He's moving up the timeline, she said. How close are we? The quantum targeting is at 93% accuracy, Jihoon reported. We need at least 98 before activation. Can we reach that in 5 days? If we get more direct neural readings, yes. Salman nodded grimly. Then we need to provoke more direct contact. The plan took shape quickly. If the hegemony wouldn't continue peaceful negotiations, humanity would create situations that forced interaction. Within hours, carefully orchestrated resistance incidents began around the globe. In Nairobi, protesters gathered near a hegemony atmospheric converter. The demonstration remained peaceful, but grew large enough to require alien security forces to respond directly. Hidden scanners in the crowd collected neural data from dozens of different hegemony species. In Rio de Janeiro, a research team accidentally breached the security perimeter of a landing zone, necessitating interrogation by hegemony officials. Each question, each threat, provided valuable quantum signatures. The humans have lost their minds, Doyen reported to Tahoe. After your warning, resistance has increased rather than decreased. Tahoe studied the pattern of incidents on the global map. It's too coordinated, he said slowly. These aren't spontaneous acts of defiance. They're probing us. For the first time in his long career of conquest, Tahoe felt genuine unease. The conquered shouldn't behave this way. They shouldn't be this organized, this purposeful in the face of overwhelming force. Prepare a punitive response, he ordered. Select 10 mid-sized population centers and remove them from the map. Make the demonstration impossible to misinterpret. The targeting systems will be ready in 12 hours, Doyen confirmed. In hidden facilities worldwide, humanity's final preparations accelerated. The quantum accuracy of the contingency reached 96% as new data flooded in from each hegemony interaction. Minhee, director of the Cultural Preservation Initiative, reported to Salman from her underground bunker in Kyoto. The global seed banks are secured. Digital archives of all major libraries and museums have been transferred to electromagnetic pulse-protected storage. If there's retaliation after activation, our knowledge will survive. Similar reports came from around the world. Key scientific personnel have been quietly moved to hardened facilities. Backup generators and food supplies were in place. Whatever happened after the contingency activated, humanity had taken steps to ensure its survival. In his private quarters, Tahoe reviewed historical records of Earth's conflicts. Unlike most conquered species, humans had a long history of not just warfare, but asymmetric warfare. Smaller forces defeating larger ones through unexpected strategies. What are you planning? He whispered to the image of Earth rotating on his screen. His question was interrupted by an alert. Admiral, we've detected unusual energy signatures from multiple locations on the planet. The readings are difficult to classify. Weapons? Tahoe asked sharply. Unknown. The energy patterns don't match any known technology. They're exhibiting quantum properties we've only seen in theoretical research. Tahoe felt cold certainty settle over him. Begin the punitive strikes immediately. Target the largest energy signature first. In Antarctica, alarms blared through the facility. We've been detected, Jihoon reported, fingers flying across control panels. Hegemony ships are repositioning for orbital strikes. Salman looked at the status display. The contingency's accuracy had reached 97.5%. So close, but not quite at the safety threshold. "How long until they can fire?" she asked. "Minutes at most. Their first target appears to be us." Salman made the hardest decision of her life. Activate emergence protocols. Everyone to the backup facility. She turned to the console where the contingency's activation system waited, a simple red button under a clear protective cover. "What about the final calibrations?" Juhoon asked. "No time. We activate now or never." Salman lifted the cover. "The button stays here, but we don't have to be. The quantum link will work from the backup site." As the facility began its evacuation sequence, Salman took one last look at the button that could save humanity or condemn trillions of alien beings. In just hours, someone would press it, ready or not. The emergency backup facility, buried deep within the Antarctic mountains, hummed with tense energy. Unlike the primary site with its advanced technology and spacious design, this was a bare-bones operation, a last resort never meant to be used. 78 humans crowded the central chamber, their breath creating clouds in the barely heated air. Representatives from every nation stood shoulder to shoulder, many meeting in person for the first time after years of secure video conferences. They had arrived through a network of tunnels, some traveling for days through secret passages beneath the ice. "The hegemony ships will reach firing position in 43 minutes, reported General Wujin, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Our primary facility will be destroyed shortly after." Salman nodded, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the quantum link terminal, the only piece of advanced technology they had managed to transfer to the backup site. The system was connected through quantum entanglement to the activation button they had left behind. "Before we proceed," she said, her voice echoing in the cold chamber, "you all need to understand exactly what the contingency will do." The room fell silent. Many had heard explanations before, but never from the creator herself, never on the day of activation. The contingency creates a quantum displacement field tuned specifically to non-human neural patterns, Salman explained, pointing to a simple diagram on the screen. "It will affect every member of the hegemony and their allied species, everywhere in the galaxy, simultaneously." She paused, watching their faces. Some showed fear, others determination. A few seemed resigned, as if accepting the moral burden about to fall on their shoulders. "The field exploits a quantum vulnerability in their consciousness," she continued. "This isn't something they could have defended against because they don't even understand it exists. Their brain structures evolved to use quantum effects for higher cognition. It's what makes them technologically superior to us. But it's also their weakness." "And what happens to them?" asked the representative from Brazil, a woman who had spent her career advocating for indigenous rights. "What exactly does displacement mean?" Salman hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "They don't die. They're shifted, displaced into a parallel quantum state. Effectively, from our perspective, they'll simply disappear." "Where do they go?" asked the Israeli representative. "Is there another reality where they continue to exist?" "Theoretical models suggest yes. Their consciousness would remain intact, just elsewhere, in a parallel quantum state that doesn't interact with ours." The Russian representative leaned forward. "Can it be reversed? Could they find a way back?" "Theoretically. But that's a question for after we survive," Salman answered, glancing at the countdown timer. "Right now, we have 38 minutes until the hegemony destroys our main facility and likely begins planetary bombardment." President Hygen of the Global Emergency Council stood up. At 73, she was the oldest person in the room and had overseen the contingency projects since its inception 15 years earlier. "We need to vote," she said simply. "This decision must be unanimous. We are about to affect trillions of sentient beings. Each of us must carry that weight equally." The voting process was simple. Each representative approached a scanner that confirmed their identity and registered their decision. The tension grew with each person who stepped forward. though no one spoke. This moment had been discussed, debated, argued over for years in secure communications. There was nothing left to say. When the last vote was registered, the screen displayed the result: unanimous approval. A soft alert chimed from the quantum link terminal. Ji-hoon checked the readings and turned to Salman with urgency in his voice. Hegemony ships have accelerated. Impact at the main facility expected in 12 minutes. The quantum link? Salman asked. Still stable. Once they destroy the main site, we don't know if the link will hold. President Hyjin approached the console. Though the actual button remained in the main facility, the quantum interface here would transmit the activation command instantaneously. I will do this, she said firmly. As the elected representative of humanity's emergency council, the burden should be mine. No one objected. The room fell completely silent as Hyjin placed her palm on the scanner. The system recognized her biometrics, and a simple virtual button appeared on the screen. Her finger hovered over it as she addressed the room. Let history record that we did not choose this war. We simply chose not to perish. She pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. The room remained silent except for the soft hum of equipment. Did it? Someone began. Then the quantum link terminal flashed bright blue. Streams of data cascaded across the screens faster than human eyes could follow. The entire facility vibrated with energy as the greatest quantum event in human history began. It's working, Ji-hoon whispered, watching the readings. The field is propagating. On the main screen, they could see a satellite view of the hegemony ships positioned above Antarctica. The massive vessels continued their approach, weapon systems glowing as they prepared to fire. Then, without warning or special effect, they simply vanished. No explosion, no dramatic disintegration. One moment the sky was filled with alien ships, the next, empty space. The representatives stared in disbelief. Theoretical models and simulations were one thing. Seeing the actual effect was another entirely. Global confirmation coming in, General Woojin announced, monitoring communications. Hegemony ships disappearing worldwide. Atmospheric processors inactive. Ground forces gone. On screens around the room, images poured in from cities across the planet. Empty hegemony vessels drifting in orbit. Alien ground vehicles sitting abandoned. Equipment continuing to run with no operators. The quantum field propagation is expanding at faster than light speed through entanglement pathways, Salman reported, studying the data. Based on our intercepted star charts, it will reach the furthest hegemony worlds within minutes. President Hyjin sat heavily in her chair, the weight of what they had done visible on her face. How many beings? She asked quietly. Based on hegemony census data we intercepted, Ji-hoon's voice faltered. Approximately 18 trillion sentient individuals across 7,000 star systems. The room fell silent again as the magnitude of their action settled over them. They had not killed these beings, at least not in any conventional sense, but they had removed them from existence in this reality. We should begin the surface return protocol, General Woojin said after a long pause. There will be panic, confusion. People need leadership. As the representatives prepared to return to their nations, Salman remained at the quantum terminal, studying the continuous stream of data. What is it? Ji-hoon asked, noticing her intense focus. The displacement field is still active, she said quietly. And there's feedback. Feedback. From where? Salman's eyes widened as she examined the readings. From the other side. Whatever quantum state they've been shifted to, something there is responding. The morning after the contingency activated, Major Dae-hyun led the first team into an abandoned hegemony cruiser hovering above Seoul. The massive ship hung motionless in the sky, its engines still running but its crew vanished. The boarding team moved through empty corridors with weapons raised, finding meals half-eaten, control panels still active, and personal quarters that looked as if their occupants had simply stepped away for a moment. It's like a ghost ship, whispered one of the soldiers. Dae-hyun touched nothing as they made their way to the bridge. The ship's systems continued to function. Displays showing star maps, communications, and life support all operating normally. Only the crew was missing. Similar scenes played out worldwide as humanity cautiously explored the suddenly empty alien vessels and facilities. In orbit, space agencies scrambled to reach the larger ships before they drifted into dangerous trajectories. On Mars, the small human research outpost reported that the massive hegemony base that had been threatening them now stood abandoned, its doors open, its technology intact. 3 days after what was already being called the disappearance, Ji-hoon entered Summon's office in the Antarctic facility. She hadn't slept since activation, monitoring the quantum feedback that continued to pulse through their systems. "The Security Council is asking for answers," he said. "The feedback signal is getting stronger. People want to know what it means." Salman looked up from her screens, her eyes red from exhaustion. "It means they still exist. Somewhere. And they're trying to communicate. Can they come back?" "I don't know. The theoretical models never accounted for this level of response." She pointed to the data streams. "Their consciousness survived the transition intact. They're organized. They're purposeful." President Hyjin called an emergency session of the Global Council 1 week after the disappearance. Representatives from every nation gathered in New York, their faces showing a mixture of relief, triumph, and growing concern. "We've secured all known hegemony technology within Earth's orbit," General Wujin reported. "Preliminary analysis suggests we're centuries behind their level of advancement. But with time, we can adapt and understand their systems." "And what of the ethical implications?" asked the Brazilian representative. "We've displaced trillions of sentient beings. History will judge this action." "History is written by the survivors," the Russian delegate countered. "And we have survived." The debate raged for hours. Some nations called for immediate colonization of the empty hegemony worlds, a galaxy-wide land rush to claim the suddenly available resources. Others urged caution, worried about both the moral implications and the potential for the displaced aliens to somehow return. Through it all, the quantum feedback continued, growing steadily stronger. 2 weeks after activation, Salman made a decision. Without consulting the Security Council, she directed a modified signal back through the quantum link, a simple mathematical sequence, the universal language. The response came within minutes, the same sequence, completed and extended. "They're fully conscious," she told Ji-hoon. "The displacement didn't harm them. They exist in a parallel quantum state, and they're trying to establish communication." "Should we tell the Council?" Salman considered this. "Not yet. If people knew we could potentially bring them back, some would demand it while others would insist on preventing it at all costs. We need more information first." For the next month, Salman worked in secret, establishing a rudimentary quantum communication protocol with the displaced hegemony. What she learned troubled her deeply. The aliens weren't angry. They were curious. The displacement had shifted them to a parallel reality where they could observe but not interact with the physical universe as humans understood it. "They've experienced this before," she told Ji-hoon after a particularly long communication session. "Not as victims, but as perpetrators. The hegemony itself once faced a species that threatened them, and they used a similar quantum displacement weapon. They've been doing this for millennia, displacing any civilization that developed technology that could challenge them." "A cycle of displacement," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Yes, and now they believe we'll follow the same path. Expand into their empty worlds, grow powerful, and eventually face a new threat that will solve the same way." The first human colonization ships launched 3 months after the disappearance, with hegemony star charts and faster-than-light technology now available. Reaching nearby systems took weeks instead of the generations it would have required with human technology. The colony ships found empty worlds, some completely abandoned, others with infrastructure still running on automated systems. Hegemony records were intact, providing insights into thousands of years of history across multiple species and civilizations. On Earth, The ethical debate intensified. Religious leaders called the contingency a violation of divine law. Human rights organizations argued that displacement without trial or individual consideration was a form of genocide. Military and security experts countered that it had been the only option for survival. 6 months after activation, Sulman made her decision. She submitted her resignation from the Global Defense Initiative and prepared to disappear into private life. Before leaving, she recorded a final classified interview for historical archives. "The quantum feedback is strengthening," she explained to the archivist. "The displacement isn't permanent. It never was. The barrier between our reality and theirs is thinning. Whether through their efforts or natural quantum processes, eventually that barrier will break down." "How long?" the archivist asked. "Decades, perhaps centuries. But it will happen." Sulman's face showed the weight of her knowledge. "We're alone now, but not forever. The universe is vast. Whatever we become in the silence that follows, we should remember this. We won our freedom with a button that made others vanish. That knowledge will shape us, for better or worse." After the interview, Sulman disappeared. Rumors placed her in remote locations around the world, always near ancient sites where, according to hegemony records, earlier civilizations had thrived before being incorporated into the empire. 5 years passed. Humanity expanded to a dozen former hegemony worlds, adapting alien technology and growing more confident in their new role as inheritors of the galaxy. The quantum feedback faded from public awareness, classified as a scientific curiosity rather than a warning. On a distant former hegemony world, in a vast library complex built into a mountainside, Ji-hoon made a discovery that changed everything. He had been leading a research team translating alien historical records when they found reference to the first displacement. The hegemony wasn't the first to use this technology, he reported to the Colonial Security Council. They were victims of it, long ago. Another species used quantum displacement against their ancestors. When the hegemony eventually developed their own version of the technology, they did the same to others. It's a cycle that's repeated for millions of years. "Are you suggesting this is some kind of galactic pattern?" asked the council chair. "I'm suggesting it's more than that," Ji-hoon replied. "These records indicate that each displacement event thins the barrier between quantum realities. Each cycle weakens the universal membrane that separates parallel states of existence. Beyond the former borders of hegemony space, other civilizations that had lived in fear of expansion now looked toward the silent region with confusion and growing concern. Long-range sensors detected human ships exploring former hegemony worlds. Communication attempts went unanswered. And deep within that silence, unnoticed by human instruments, quantum reality itself began to shift. The cycle continued, as it had for millions of years before. The button had been pressed, and the consequences were only beginning to unfold. The end.